has said this publicly. The PCS has said this publicly. PPP, the people of Kenya need to be taken through the process of PPP. A PIIP proposal, which is the case of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, that is privately initiated proposal. Mr. Speaker, which is part of PPP. Mr. Speaker, is not the first one. The first PIIP, Mr. Speaker, in this country was the road, the expressway. The expressway was through a PIIP. The government evaluated it. They found a proper contractor. Now we have expressway with a contract period of 30 years, transferable back to the people of Kenya once the road is used and maintained. Mr. Speaker, the difference between the expressway and the airport is that there was a proposal. And this is not just one proposal. People keep coming with proposals. Some are serious, some are not serious. Some you invite them to come for meetings, they don't come. When a PIIP proposal has been done, the contracting authority, in this case Kenya Airports Authority, goes through a preliminary process of establishing the viability and the verifying the existence of the company, the capacity, and so forth. Once they do the preliminary process, Mr. Speaker, as the case is in Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, that process now moves to PPP committee, PPP's directorate in the ministry, in the treasury. That process has not even reached the treasury yet. What Kenya Airports Authority was to do is to first establish the relationship with the proponent. Now, they have reached a certain threshold now that they should be able now to do public participation and stakeholder engagement, after which they will send the report to PPP's committee. The PPP directorate will move it back to the contracting authority. The contracting authority will write to the ministry. The ministry, the cabinet secretary in charge of transport, when the time comes, will write to the attorney general. The attorney general will go through it, Mr. Speaker, if he agrees. Also, it is forwarded to the treasury minister. The minister, if he agrees, you do a CAB memo. And you know, Mr. Speaker, you have worked in government. A CAB memo will be circulated to among the parties. It's tabled in the cabinet. And if the cabinet agrees, they pass it. So for someone to wake up one morning and say all such an elaborate process would have involved one individual, let alone even one agency. A PPP process is a collective process of government. And I want to assure the people of Kenya that your assets are safe. Jomo Kenyatta International Airport is safe. When this process advances, and I hope it advances, we will get to the level where we will make sure that the product that we get is going to the benefit of the people of Kenya. One thing I want to assure you, the first thing I did was to resolve the dispute that was there. There was a claim of 20 billion shillings hanging on KA. Through negotiation and mediation, we made sure that we negotiated out and only we are paying 600 million shillings. Mr. Speaker, that now the airport is ready for investment, ready to receive investment, like other airports. Once we are done with that, Malindi, for example, where Honorable Baya comes from, Mr. Speaker, has got funding from Italian government, and we are able to get funding from Italian government to build a modern airport in Malindi. This is how we should move. If we succeed to get PPP in Jomo Kenyatta, and again, another thing I want to assure Kenyans, where the proponent will build the terminal is the only size of land, maybe 20, 30 acres. It's not the 1,000 acres, the total acres of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. It's only a small section that will be concessioned where the proponent will build the terminal. And we need it. Otherwise, if we don't need it, Mr. Speaker, if we don't do it, we will become, Mr. Speaker, the last in this region. Ethiopia has defeated us. Rwanda is about to complete their airport. Tanzania has improved theirs. Even Uganda have a better airport. Even Entebbe is looking more presentable. The same Kenyans who are talking about leaking roofs, drainage systems, Mr. Speaker, very bad infrastructure
CS nominee
should be able to support that process.
Nominee.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
You're just confirming one thing.
Yes.
Even the president lamented that the weakest link in his government was public communication. You seem to have all the facts, but nobody has been told.
Mr. Speaker, despite the fact that PCS has said, despite the fact that the presidents were communicated,
but remember this issue came because of the storm. But if it was explained along the way as you went about these things, the public would have understood you better.
Let me absolve the KA for this reason. This is a proposal of March
Honorable
of March.
Yes. I think what we just need to we have to admit that we were bad communicators. Just assure Kenyans that you will communicate better in your next assignment and that you'll advise your successor to ensure that this message you have given us today of the great work you have done will go out to be known by the public. We can now.
Yes, Unit.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with you. You see, Jomo Kenyatta is the biggest airport in the country.
In the region.
In the region, actually. And that's the biggest, one of the biggest assets Kenyans have. You want to go PPP with it. And Adani has written a letter saying that he wants to go PPP. You are not informing Kenyans that Adani, a man called Adani, has written to us. And you expect Kenyans to keep quiet. And they can see the airport was almost going. They will not keep quiet. They will not keep quiet.
Anyway,
Speaker,
let's move on.
For the record, let me just say for the record.
You are being evaluated for Minister for Sports. So let's move to sports.
But my integrity on this issue is important.
And we move on.
That, Mr. Speaker, this is a proposal of March this year. Before you communicate to the people of Kenya, you always get every year 2-3 proposals. As a matter of fact, I can confess, we've received, for airports in Kenya, we've received more than 20 proposals when I was in office. But you keep evaluating to see who is a joker, who is a serious person. Once you achieve a certain threshold, the public participation engagement is done, which was supposed to be done from this July. But, Mr. Speaker, it coincided with the time that the president made the changes, when we were now supposed to do this. Number two, more than 5 times I have communicated PPP on Jomo Kenyatta International Airport through Parliament. Several times I've been asked this question, and I've said there are proposals that we are working on, looking at, and we will communicate to the public about the PPP. So, Mr. Speaker, the time had not reached for us to make that public.
You've made the point.
The last thing I want to say is that Honorable Junet talked about protection of local content. I think, Mr. Speaker, we just need to be serious as a country. We need to implement our intellectual property laws, Mr. Speaker. I know that we have institutions in place, Kenya Copyright Board, Kenya Industrial Property Institute. We have also, Mr. Speaker, Anti-Counterfeit Agency, which I served as the first board member, who are supposed to do enforcement. I think that needs to be done. Suffice to note, Mr. Speaker, that is not within my ministry. It is in the Arts and Culture Department in the Ministry of Gender, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, also in the terms of local content, I totally agree with Honorable Junet. We need to bring Citizen TV and Royal Media have a product that they try to support local content. Mr. Speaker, they want to go the same way with Sony Studio, Universal Studios, and so forth. We need to support more of the same of local companies that are going to take local content, air them, and, Mr. Speaker, pay our artists across the country. And this 60% local content is easily achievable if we find ways of engaging them. And I think what I have had for the short period after my nomination, I have engaged the sector. Many people think that this is one sector that has never had proper public participation. The people have the ideas, the stakeholders have the ideas. It needs just a leadership that is listening, and I'm going to listen to them, and we work together towards achieving this 60% local content.
Members, one question each, and Minister nominee, you answer concisely and precisely. Naisula.
Mr. Speaker, allow me to say this because PPP might happen again where the nominee will go to. And you heard what the nominee of Treasury said this morning, that Kenyans are scared of PPPs because most of the time there's so much miscommunication about it. We hope as a committee you will do better in your communication and also look at those PPPs that they serve the interest of the country more than the investors. That is what the nominee of Treasury said. But to my
that is just a comment. You will not
a comment. Don't
answer to it.
Yeah. So I have a comment. Kenya is hosting the African Nations Championship 2025 next year and the AFCON in 2027. Do you have any ideas on how Kenya can deliver this to world-class standards? What will we do differently if you are if we find you suitable to hold that office? And how do you plan to incorporate stakeholder and public feedback into your planning process? And lastly, do you know if as a country we have a gender violence and abuse policy in sports?
Nominee?
In the interest of time, I will go straight to, as guidance, Mr. Speaker, to say that yes, I am aware that we are hosting CHAN next year. We are preparing Nyayo Stadium and Kasarani for purpose of, to be ready by December for purpose of CHAN, and then in preparation for the Africa Cup of Nations in 2027. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say that to deliver this world-class, to deliver the tournament to a world-class level, Mr. Speaker, we are going to put in place a steering committee that has all the stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, I'm also inviting, and I will invite the private sector to quickly join in. We don't need to wait until late, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that they invest, Mr. Speaker, in the opportunities that come with, Mr. Speaker, the Africa Cup of Nations in 2027. Mr. Speaker, also we are working on the infrastructure. Talanta Stadium, which is going to be in Jamhuri along Gong Road, Mr. Speaker, is ongoing. I will make sure that it's delivered to the required standards. Mr. Speaker, also all the stadium where the players who are going to train, we are going also to make sure that the stadia are put to be world class. One thing that is lacking in our country as we speak, Mr. Speaker, is that we do not have standards put in place in regulation of infrastructure. The law itself, the Sports Act, says that Sports Kenya will set the standards, but the regulations must be put in place. As a cabinet secretary, I promise this committee that will be a priority for me to make sure that all the infrastructure across the country are going to be built based on world-class standards. Because, Mr. Speaker, you will find some counties are awarding contracts, some institutions at national level awarding contracts to build a stadium, but if you realize the stadium themselves, they are not world class. We are redoing now Nyayo Stadium. Yes, we are redoing Nyayo Stadium. Something we used to think it has 30,000 capacity. The reality is that it can only accommodate 18,000 people. The same to Kasarani is going to come down to 50,000 from the 60,000 we used to think. Because when you now deal with the standards itself, Mrs. Required standards, it's going to be different. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the gender violence is a serious issue in sports, and particularly more prevalent, Mr. Speaker. In fact, not just violence, gender violence, abuse, and sexual abuse, Mr. Speaker, among athletes who are women. Mr. Speaker, you know the case of Agnes Tirop. You are an ardent fan of athletics, who was killed, Mr. Speaker, in my county. Mr. Speaker, that is just one case. I know athletes, world-class athletes with world records, whom I have had to assist in the past as a senator, to call the DCI to protect them from attacks from, Mr. Speaker, pests that call themselves husbands. Once they see an athlete as a potential, they present themselves as suitors, Mr. Speaker, pretend to be in a marriage, Mr. Speaker, and then they prey on them and take their wealth. Mr. Speaker, this is an area that I have a passion for, not just because I've been appointed here, but something I have thought through. Even when I went to the funeral of Agnes Tirop, this is some of the things I talked about. And as a result of what happened with the Agnes Tirop, there was a committee that was formed in the ministry that came up with a raft of proposals. One, Mr. Speaker, that all training camps must, if a lady is going to be in a training camp, we must have a female matron in the training camp. Mr. Speaker, for junior athletics, you match training camps with the neighboring institutions. We need to oversight also the managers and the coaches, Mr. Speaker. Not just enough to register them, but we must be able to oversight them to make sure that they are following certain procedures. We don't want our athletes.
Some of them are the pests.
Yes.
Yes, if you don't evaluate them properly.
Absolutely. Some of them are the pests. Mr. Speaker, we will not allow as a ministry any of our teams to travel, women to travel for international assignments if they are not accompanied by a female matron. We will not allow them to travel with men alone. Mr. Speaker, this is an area with all those raft of proposals, we are going to make sure that those proposals are put into regulations and be part of also of the revised law, because we need to revise the Sports Act. The Sports Act, Mr. Speaker, does not recognize at all the institutions of county government, does not recognize so many things that are modern. We will make sure that these issues raised by Honourable Member, Mr. Speaker, are going to be incorporated in the sports updated sports policy.
Let's take Nelson, Posing, and Gikaria, one question each in that row.
Waziri, the Olympics are ongoing, and I like the fact that you've also raised the issue of athletes from the North Rift. There's a dire situation with our athletes. As much as they are doing Kenya proud, there's really nothing to show for in terms of infrastructure and support that the government has provided to athletes. What you see there is sweat and tears from athletes who've struggled without any support. Many of you have seen athletes, dodging motor vehicles and motorcycles on the road training. That should not be the situation our athletes should be subjected to. Many of them actually have made it to the global stage just by sheer determination. Waziri, coming from that region, please tell the country what you will do different this time around. Your predecessor, when he was here, said the same thing. He said he was going to change. He actually said he was going to give them world-class treatment, but the situation is totally different today. Number two, the people of Kericho County have sent me. No, this is a comment. They can decide to answer or ignore, but just for the record, the people of Kericho County have sent me to you. I landed with you in Kericho County, in Kerenga Airstrip, and there was a contractor on site. Immediately we left, the contractor left. What really happened, Waziri?
Thank you. They left together. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Murkomen, many Kenyans think that you have actually been taken to the right place because you come from a county of a home of champions, exactly. So I think many people are seeing that, including myself. But my question, Honorable Murkomen, is there is a gap. And again, people think the Minister for Sports is Minister of Nairobi, so they think that it's Minister of Nairobi. There's nothing on the ground. So if you get the favor of House and you become the Minister, Honorable Murkomen, what will you do to bring the nexus between the national office, your office at national level, and the county, so that people in sub-locations or locations can actually feel that the Minister of Sport is their minister? Is there any way where good people or good sport people, and particularly maybe football, can win in that sub-location or location and be taken through, so that at least they can also feel like they're also national people, so that they don't see the Minister for Sports as only Minister for Nairobi? Thank you.
Vicaria?
Thank you, Chairman. Mine is just to, I'm just hoping that the nominee will crack the whip at FKF. Honorable Chairman, yes, and he has to, Honorable Chairman. I remember one day, 142 million was paid to some English company to procure the broadcasting van, which never arrived in the country. And after paying, we were told that the company that was given that money went into insolvency. So I think it is important for us to crack. But my question is, the nominee, my friend Murkomen, one of the best strikers in the Bunge Football Club, is football and talent was created at the youth centers, at the location and sub-location, then districts are those days, either sponsored by, in collaboration with, partnership with either Germany, Netherlands, and England. I don't know whether there's a policy for you to bring back, because when you talk about football, people think of Harambee Stars and AFC and Gor Mahia, but these players come from some place. So what policy is there to revamp the youth centers' sports, not only for football, but sports in general? Thank you, Chairman.
Can answer those three, nominee?
Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Koech has talked about infrastructure. We have a number of pending stadia that needs to be completed. That includes, Mr. Speaker, Kapkatet Stadium in his county. It includes also, Mr. Speaker, the Wote Stadium in Makueni. It also includes the Kamarin, the famous Kamarin Stadium, Mr. Speaker, in Iten. In fact, I was so embarrassed. I'm sure most of you have seen this documentary in CNN, which has been run in the last 2 weeks. And, you know, it's now Kamarin is a monument of shame because the athletes there are complaining about the infrastructure and the journalists are showing how the Kamarin has become what it is. Mr. Speaker, I have been briefed already, Mr. Speaker, in the process of preparing myself for this confirmation hearing, that some of the processes are ongoing in terms of delivering the infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate that the President has already given direction that sports fund should be wholly supporting the sports activities, and one of which is delivery of infrastructure. I will make sure that, unfortunately, I'm being followed by the problem of pending bills all the way to sports infrastructure, but we'll make sure that we structure the sports fund in such a way that we'll deliver our infrastructure. We need to complete Bugungu Stadium, Mr. Speaker, in Bungoma. We need to complete the stadium, Mr. Speaker, in Bungoma.
Masinde Muliro.
Masinde Muliro, yes. I was confusing with the one in...
Buhung is also stalled.
Yes, it's stalled, but the main one was to make sure that Masinde Muliro is covered properly and completed. The one is Kericho is completed because we built it recently because of these Madaraka issues. We are going to do a Kwale one. It must be also up to standard, but also all the other stadiums, the Speaker, that are still pending will be completed to standard.
Speaker, also Udaya Stadium and Ruringu Stadium.
Ruringu and Udaya, Mr. Speaker, have also, especially Ruringu is in advanced stage. We'll make sure that we complete and restructure it. It is part of the stadium, Mr. Speaker, that are going to be used in African Cup of Nations for training, and we will make sure that we deal with that. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of, so the infrastructure is very important. The second thing is, Mr. Speaker, it's not just enough to do infrastructure. The government must invest in the training itself, in identification of talent, and I'll marry this with the question of Honorable Kikaria. We will use the Kenya Academy of Sports to make sure that we establish training centers in at least all the counties, Mr. Speaker, where we are identify talent are trained. We will work also with the schools. Schools are better placed to help us to identify the talent. There's some of our footballers like Adrian, Mr. Speaker, who are picked last year to go to Spain, who are, as a result of sports championship in high school and in primary school. We will make sure that we work with them. In fact, one of the issues that I need to explore is to make sure that the Kenya Academy of Sports are going to train all the teachers who are coaches across the country. And not just training, they must also be certified, so that that certification is going to be recognized in their promotion, so that we need to use the teachers who are already in schools to make sure that we develop. That is really what is bottom up in terms of sports. Mr. Speaker, just to mention the Karenga Stadium in passing, as has been asked by Honorable Nelson, airstrip. It is true that we established and built Karenga airstrip for purpose at that point in time to facilitate the travel as insofar as the Madaraka Day was concerned. However, we had promised the people of Kericho that we will do a world-class airport there, and we needed land. Even when we built the airstrip, the land did not belong to the government of Kenya. It's still being owned by the private company that owns the tea farm, and the negotiations are in advanced stage, Mr. Speaker. I believe we have that we will succeed to get. They had offered about 20 acres, but I said it will be useful to get at least 100 acres in that place so that we build an airstrip properly with a proper terminal, Mr. Speaker, to serve the people of Kericho. The money had already been set aside by Kenya Airports Authority. Some of the money that was allocated at that time, part of it has been used, part has been left to complete the negotiations. I have no doubt in my mind that my successor will deliver Karenga airstrip, Mr. Speaker, in the fullness of time. Had I been given a bit of more time in the same ministry, I had no doubt that within the next 1 year, we were going to be able to deliver the Karenga airstrip. Not just Karenga airstrip, many other airstrips across the country that the people of Kenya are demanding, because we want to make travel become bottom-up, cheaper, and our country accessible, including the plans we had in Moyale and Marsabit County and a number of the airstrips, Mr. Speaker. I agree with Honorable Kosing. Honorable Kosing's county produces some of the best athletes in the country. Mr. Speaker, you know, Honorable Kosing and I come from the same area. Leland area produces some of the best athletes, world beaters. But, Mr. Speaker, the facilities are not there. There's a place that border both of us, they have a small training